Thank you, Elohim, for helping me to read scriptures from the besorah. This is BARASHITH Genesis 13 through 16. Starting at verse 1. And Abram went up from Mitzrayim into the south. He and his ass and all that he had with him. And Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver and in gold. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel. To the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, the place of the altar which he had made there at first. And there Abram called on the name of Yahuwah. Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their possessions were great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. And at that time the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelt in the land. Then Abram said to Lot, Please let there be no strife between you and me, and between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brothers. Is not all the land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, then I go to the right, or if you go to the right, then I go to the left. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw all the plain of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before Yahuwah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of Yahuwah, like the land of Mitzrayim as you go toward Sar. So Lot chose for himself all the plain of the Jordan, and Lot moved east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram dwelling in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelling in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were evil and sinned before Yahuwah, exceedingly so. And after Lot had separated from him, Yahuwah said to Abram, Now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward, and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see I shall give to you, and your seed forever. And I shall make your seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could count the dust of the earth, then your seed also could be counted. Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. So Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in the Kebron, and built an altar there to Yahuwah. Thank you, Holy Elohim. That is the end of Barashith Genesis 13. This is Barashith Genesis 14. Thank you, Holy Elohim. And it came to be in the Yomim of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Ariel, king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, that they fought against Bera, king of Sodom, and Bersha, king of Amorah, Shinab, king of Admah, Shemeber, king of Seboim, and the king of Bela, that is Sar. All these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year, Kedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and smote the Rephaim in Ashtaroth, Carmaim, and the Zuzim in Ham, and the Emites in Shaoth, Kiryathaim, and the Korites in their mountain of Seir, as far as Al-Paran, which is by the wilderness, and they turned back and came to Eri Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and smote all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites, who dwelt in Ketsetzon Tamar, and the king of Sodom, and the king of Amorah, and the king of Admah, and the king of Seboim, and the king of Bela, that is Sar, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim against Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of Goyim, and Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arya, king of Elasar. 4 kings against 5. And the valley of Siddim had many tar pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their food, and went away. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom and his goods and left. And one who had escaped came and informed Abram the Hebrew, where he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and brother of Aner. And they had a covenant with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He and his servants divided against them by Layla, and smote them and pursued them as far as Koba, which is on the left of Damascus. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And after his return from the defeat of Kedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Sheol, that is, the king's valley. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought up bread and wine. Now he was the priest of Elyon. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the highest one, possession of the Shemaim and Eretz. And blessed be the highest one, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him 1/10 of all. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to Yahweh, the highest one, the possessor of the Shemaim and Eretz, not to take a thread or a sandal strap or whatever is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion. And that is the end of BARASHITH Genesis 14. Thank you, Elohim, Yahuwah. And this is BARASHITH Genesis 15. Thank you, Elohim, Yahuwah. After these events, the word of Yahuwah came to Abram in a vision, saying, Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield. Your reward is exceedingly great. And Abram said, Adonai Yahuwah, what would you give me, seeing I go childless? And the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, See, you have given me no seed, and see, one born in my house is my heir. And see, the word of Yahuwah came to him, saying, this one is not your heir, but the one from your own body is your heir. And he brought him outside and said, look now toward the Shemaim and count the stars, if you are able to count them. And he said to him, so are your seed. And he believed Yahuwah. And he reckoned it to him for obedience. And he said to him, I am Yahuwah who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Adonai Yahuwah, whereby do I know that I possess it? And he said to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took all these to him, and cut them in the middle, and placed each half opposite the other. But he did not cut the birds. And the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. And it came to be when the sun was going down, and a deep sleep fell upon Abram, that see, a frightening great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge. And afterward let them come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the lawlessness of the Amorites is not yet complete. And it came to be, when the sun went down and it was dark, that see a smoking oven and a burning torch passing between those pieces. On the same Yom, Yahuwah made a covenant with Abram, saying, I have given this land to your seed, from the river of Mitzrayim to the great river, the river Pharat, with the Karaite and the Kerizzite and the Cadmonite, and the Kittite, and the Perizzite, and the Rephaim, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Girgashite, and the Jebusite. And that's the end of Barashith Genesis 15. Thank you, Elohim Yahuwah. This is Barashith Genesis 16. Thank you, Elohim Yahuwah. And starting in verse 1. And Sarai, Abraham's Asha, had borne him no child, and she had a Mitzrite, female servant, whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, See, Yahuwah has kept me from bearing children. Please go into my female servant. It might be that I am built up by her. And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abraham's Asha, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mitzrite, and gave her to her husband, Abram, to be his Asha. After Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, and he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said to Abram, My lawless be upon you. I gave my female servant into your bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let Yahuwah judge between you and me. And Abram said to Sarai, See, your female servant is in your hand. Do to her what is good in your eyes. And Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. And the messenger of Yahuwah found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, Sarai's female servant, where have you come from? And where are you going? And she said, I am fleeing from the presence of Sarai, my mistress. And the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, Return to your mistress, and humble yourself under her hand. And the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, I am going to greatly increase your seed. I am going to increase your seed greatly, too numerous to be counted. And the messenger of Yahuwah said to her, See, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and shall call his name Ishmael, because Yahuwah has heard your affliction, and he is to be a wild man. His hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And dwell over against all his brothers. And she called the name of Yahuwah who spoke to her, You are the Al who sees. For she said, Even here have I seen after him who sees me. That is why the well was called Bar-Lachi-Roi. See, it is between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son. And Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. And that is the end of BARASHITH Genesis 16. Thank you, Holy Elohim.